Hey, it's April, and if you checked out my last video, you will have seen that I received these two incredibly awesome sculpts from LoganDolls. Last time I was working on the grey monster, which means this time it's going to be Mangle. So let's get started on turning her into a colourful ragdoll type character. First, I'm using acrylics to paint the patches. I want them to look like fabric swatches. Then I sketched out the eyes with pencil. And back to acrylics to fill them in. I'm going for really big, oversized anime style eyes on this one. I think they'll suit the character really well, plus they are so much fun to paint. Once the paint dries, I can blush with soft pastels and stop to paint the waterline because I somehow forgot before. I'm using watercolour pencils to try and build up more saturation, but I quickly realised that I wasn't going to be able to get the colours I wanted with just pencils and pastels, so back to the trusty paints. And then blend it out with pastels. I'm switching the little red patch to a blue-green colour to help break up the sections more clearly. And once I'm happy with all the blushing, I can add all the final graphic details. And my favourite part, the extra fluffy lashes. And that's the face up pretty much done, but she still needs some eyes. So I got 2 blobs of epoxy, marked out where the irises need to be, and made holes with a Dremel, then painted with acrylics. I'm applying a coat of gloss varnish and a thin layer of UV resin. I can then paint the pupils with acrylics. I thought using a cross pupil for the right eye would be a fun reference to the sort of stitched button eyes that ragdolls sometimes have. And then finish with a dome of resin. And now they're ready to be placed in the head. I also added some white highlights to the lashes and the brows just to make them pop a little bit more, and some tiny polka dots to the middle patch. For the finishing touch, I filled the gaps with oohoo glue and stuck in some yarn fluff. It was actually Logan's friend that suggested this, and it's the reason we went for the whole ragdoll vibe, and I am so glad they did, because it turned out looking really cute, and I think it helps sell the character really well too. Now that she has a face, I need to make the body match by blushing with soft pastels, painting some tummy stars with acrylics, and I used tiny beads to make a little belly bar. Then painted some colourful patches onto the hand to match her face. And coating the fingernails in gloss varnish. And now we have finished hands. I'm thoroughly obsessed with the heart hands, that they are just so cute. I did the same patterns on the piece hands, and then left the standard hands skin toned with painted nails just for a different option. The doll body is now fully customised, so we need an outfit. To start, I made a pattern for some oversized pants and cut the pieces from burgundy cotton fabric. Then painted some abstract swirls. And cut out a bunch of fabric overlays to attach with fabric glue. This is basically my version of patchwork pants. I thought it would be more fun to do fluid random shapes rather than squares and stuff. I then took a pink Sharpie and lined some of the edges to give them definition. Once everything dried, I stitched the pieces together, finished side in, and we have pants. For the waistband, I cut a strip of the burgundy fabric and attached some pink patches, folded in half, and sewed to the top of the pants. Then cut out some holes and painted them to give the illusion of eyelets. Pushed through some toggle type pieces and glued in place. For the sweater, I cut the pattern pieces out of a chunky purple knit, glued down some overlays, sewed the pieces together, cut some holes, added button closure straps to the back, and distressed the sleeves. I did end up adding a few more patches later on, but I didn't record it, so you'll see that in the photos at the end. For the shoes, I got some foot-shaped cardboard pieces, a strip of craft foam, and super glue. Glued the foam to one cardboard piece, and then glued the other piece on top. Then smothered the foam with glitter and glue to add texture so that the clay will properly stick to the foam and not just bounce off. I then sculpted the details with Apoxie Sculpt. I want the bottom to be nice and chunky, so I'm using New Rocks as a reference. Then covering the top part with gooey drippy shapes. I felt like melted was kind of the shoe sole equivalent of ragged, so that it'd match a whole vibe pretty well. I then painted with acrylics. I'm adding fluorescent pink to the gaps and holes to try and give them a glowy look. Then painted the goo with a blue drippy sort of camo style pattern. Smother with gloss varnish, and then I coated the bottom part with a very thin layer of matte varnish for a more rubbery finish. I then took a sock I made with the sweater fabric and a foot-shaped cardboard piece covered in glue, pushed the cardboard down into the sock and glued in place. Then pushed one of her feet into the sock so that the fabric's correctly stretched. Filled the base with glue and squished the sock into place. Remove the foot once the glue dries and we have some knitted drippy boots. Next up, I want to make a heart necklace, so I took a blob of Epoxy Sculpt and shaped it. Made some holes. Painted with acrylics. Attached wire into the holes, and a wire loop to the top one so that I can attach it to a chain. Glued beads to the wires so they look like little clothespins. And sealed with gloss varnish. Then attached a chain. The final accessory is a little star bag, so I cut the pieces out of a blue cotton fabric, stitched them together leaving a hole at the top, turned it right side out, stuffed with cotton, and closed the seam with fabric glue. Attached chain links to the sides so I can attach it to a chain on the pants. Decorated with chunky threads. And finished with a little green cross. Now all that's left is to make her a wig. I started by gluing upside down wefts to the middle of the wig cap for the part line. Then filled in the side, making sure all the wefts are directed to the point where the hair bun will sit. Pulled over the upside down wefts and fixed in place. And then repeated on the other side. To cover the edges of the wig cap, I attached wefts to the inside and then pulled them back over the edge. I wanted to keep a really chunky edge so that the style looks looser rather than a sleek updo. I then filled in the front to make the fringe. Once the glue dried, I cut and styled with warm water with a little bit of glue mixed in. Going for that Sephiroth kind of lift on the fringe so that her face isn't too hidden. I also decided to add a little weft to the middle so that the hairline comes to a sharp point. I thought it suited the overall look more. For the buns, I rolled up 2 foil balls, covered them in glue and wrapped them with the hair. Once I got 2 nice chunky hair pops, I glued them into place on the wig cap. I wanted to have crazy long braids, which isn't possible with the brushed yarn, so I got some clip-in hair extensions and removed the clips. Glued the colours together and added a yarn weft to the top so that it blends with the rest of the wig. Braided them and then fixed in place under the buns. Unfortunately, I didn't realise my camera had died whilst making the spikes, but I basically just glued up rolled wefts around the buns and then styled them the same way I did the fringe. Then finished by pushing clothespins into the buns. I thought this tied in really well to the whole ragdoll aesthetic. And with that, we're all done. So it's time to check out the final result. Thanks so much for watching. I had a ton of fun making this one. I really hope you enjoyed watching it too. And if you want to see more of my characters come to life, hit that subscribe button and I'll see you next time.